9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Events occur in the lockout.
Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to FPC Radio Live. That's right, we are back here. We are live on a Friday. We're going to close out the week right. And yes, in case you were worrying, because you didn't see his mug up on the screen early, John is here with us. We got our screen up here. It says he is on the phone, so you're just going to have to trust me when that other voice comes over on your airwaves. You're going to have to trust me that it's John. Good morning, John.
Good morning. I'm going to have to send you another photo because I've probably lost 30 pounds since that photo, so I'm very handsome now. My hair's longer. So, I'm kind of going the way of Aaron Rodgers.
Okay.
I haven't. Well, I'm on my 8th day of cleansing, so I'm, losing weight by the minute here as I, whatever the hell my Punjab system is or whatever.
How about this? How about we agree that you go into zero more detail about your process and how you're losing the weight?
Okay.
And I will say this. I was picturing more like Tony from that episode of Seinfeld. Hey, Tony, the Mimbo, right? Flowing hair, model-like face.
That's me. That's me. George loved him, didn't he? He had a man crush on him. Who didn't? Everybody loved Tony.
But my favorite line from that was "Step off." I love "Step off," George. every so often, I'll throw that out to someone. I usually they don't pick up on it or understand that I'm throwing the reference out there. But to me, I chuckle in my head because I just think "step off" and the whole because if you remember too, that was also the episode with the phone sex worker, Jerry's girlfriend, that Kramer was also calling, and that was fantastic. That whole thing was just such a great episode. I recently did my top 10, and that didn't even make it into my top 10.
How do you do a top 10 Seinfeld list?
It was tough. It was tough. I'll tell you this, because our good friend Mike Debate and I, we did over at bingeporter.com, we did a podcast called What's Your Top 10? And, the topic of this particular show was Seinfeld. And, after the fact, I also put my list in writing and published it. And I found myself arguing with myself about the list after the fact. I'm sitting there reading it, and I'm like, how the hell did I put that there? and it just kind of speaks to how difficult it was, because the response on some of the comments on Facebook and stuff are like, I don't disagree with them necessarily, because they say things and I'm like, they say, how the hell can you leave off this? And I'm like, you know what? You're right. Like, I should have had like a 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, and then go on from there. But no, that was a great episode, and it kind of obviously speaks to how great the show Seinfeld is, because that was a very
class by itself.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was a fun exercise. Don't get me wrong, but difficult.
Well, I've been trying to do a couple of those things too, because I want to kind of get involved with that, because I love lists, obviously. And I've already done a couple of lists. Rolling Stone came out with the top 100 films of the 80s. So, here we are 40 years later, we can kind of look back and see that. And that's really when I fell in love with movies, because I was, just getting out of high school or whatever. And so many of my favorite movies came out in the 80s. And I just made a list of my top 10 films of the 80s. And it's like, geez, I'm forgetting this one. I'm forgetting that one. Oh my God, is this one better than that one? And, how many Spielberg and Scorsese films can I have in there? It's crazy. It's really difficult to do.
Well, and it's funny, because the concept of a top 10 list it seems reasonable and easy, because everyone has their own opinion. Oh, that's not a top 10 show, or that's not a top 10 this or that. But, when it comes down to it, like, it's pretty difficult to put together some of these lists. Now, if I had to rank the top 10, say, 24 seasons, well, obviously there aren't 10 of them. However, it wouldn't be as difficult, because it's a little bit easier to. But like episodes of Seinfeld, for instance, that was impossible. And
it is, yeah.
But it's fun though. It's fun, and it gives us a chance to give our opinion out there. Now, I watched the movie last night. Certainly wouldn't be in anyone's top 10 list. But it was called Old. And before you answer, John, it was not your.
Not about me.
No, okay. It was not about you. I mean, it could have been.
I wasn't aware.
It could have been. It could have been something. No, it was that.
I'm so old, I forgot it was about me.
Yeah. You never know. No, it was that M Night Shyamalan movie or
Oh, right.
Shyamalan, whatever. I mean, interesting. I mean, again, it is what it is. You have to the way I look or view and view movies is like I have I have certain, I guess, like I don't have the same standard for every movie because if that's the case, then you're going to be a movie snob and you're only going to be, you're just going to enjoy like the best of the best of the best. Well, you got to appreciate, what are the lesser quality or lesser brand movies. And this one was
Mhm.
somewhat enjoyable. I think what I really liked about it was the concept. So the idea was that have you seen the movie, John? No?
I
Yes?
haven't. No,
Okay.
no.
Well,
Uh,
I'm not gonna spoil anything.
no, no
Uh,
spoiler alert. That's
no.
okay. That's fine. Go ahead.
No, no, it's just the basic premise of it was these groups of people arrive on this beach where they basically rapidly age. And we've all seen the if you've seen the trailer or whatever, that's how they reveal it, where the kids like go in at like 6 and 10 or whatever it was, and they come out as like teenagers. But it's a fascinating concept. I think there was a lot if I were to have written the movie, now again, I'm not going to put it out there because maybe I'll write something like it. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like it was lacking. It was lacking something. I don't know. I felt a
Mhm.
little. I wouldn't say disappointed because I think I overall I enjoyed the movie. Like it caught my attention, and like I said, I enjoyed things like that. Those fascinating, like what if you're stuck on this island? You're faced with
Yeah.
this situation where like like essentially what it amounts to is like a full day on that island you would age like 50 years, you know what I mean?
Right.
So you're faced with that sort of reality, or that's your reality, and I find that fascinating. And again, I like the concept of it. I didn't have like incredibly high hopes because it was rated PG-13, I believe. Actually,
Mhm.
I have it right in front of me. Told you I watched this last night, so it's right here. Let's
Mhm.
see. Yeah, PG-13. Which look, if that kind of is like, all right, you gotta get your expectations right. It's kind of like how I was talking about the Patriots this year. You got to get your
Mhm.
expectations right. So, but yeah, I somewhat enjoyed it. Somewhat enjoyed
Yeah, M Night Shyamalan. The Sixth Sense was outstanding. I thought Unbreakable was great, and then since then it's been downhill for the most part. Like he's still trying to be as good as those movies, and he
But
hasn't been able to.
that's hard. I mean, again, when you're a type. I know we have typecast, but like when you're a
Mhm.
typewriter, it sounds kind of funny now that I say it out loud. But when you're a typewriter, not a
I had
physical,
one of those. I had a typewriter. I
yeah.
don't still have a typewriter. I know that.
Hey,
Don't
hey,
you know?
look,
But
I've the first I've used the type like I used to use a typewriter when I was a very very little kid. So,
yeah, we all did.
yeah.
Sure.
Well, anyone younger than 25, 30 probably didn't. But
Oh,
um,
doesn't even know what it is.
yeah, all I know it was something that somehow weighed 500 pounds. Like this small thing
Oh,
somehow weighed 500
yeah.
pounds. But yeah, if you are a type space, whatever you want to call it, writer, not a typewriter.
Typecast,
Yeah, type.
typecast as a writer or as a director, right?
Yeah,
Like Hitchcock.
exactly.
Everyone said
And,
his
and, and
films
that's
were
kind
all
of what he is.
similar.
He's the
Yeah,
all
oh, yeah.
right. The twist. It's always there's always some weird. There's always something to it, and it's like look after a while, like you can only be so creative. You know what I mean? Like you can
Right.
only. I mean, look at what's coming out now. It's just remake after remake. Um. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Certainly, like I said, would not land on anyone's top 10 list. But like I said, if you want a nice 2 hour of relaxation, just a random movie, go ahead and watch it. One movie though, I am really starting to get excited to see, and I don't know if I mean, I was just inherently excited to see it because it's one of my favorite, I guess, franchises since I was a little kid,
Hmm.
and I approve. Um, but the Batman
Hmm.
has gotten some very rave reviews um, in the early going, and I believe it's obviously opening up nationwide today, and a lot of people I'm sure saw it yesterday. I haven't seen it yet. I kind of wish I would have gone yesterday. I'm going to try to hopefully find some time uh, this weekend or early next week to go see it. But yeah, I'm starting to get pretty excited because the reaction early on has been pretty phenomenal.
3 hours long, which always leads me to believe is like, why? Why is a movie like that 3 hours long? Like, to me, the only movies that should be 3 hours long are epics, right? The Godfather, Godfather Part 2, Schindler's List. I mean, these are, incredibly big movies that have an incredible story to tell. Like, I don't know why it's so long, but yeah, I've enjoyed that series. I mean, I thought The Dark Knight was excellent. Batman Returns I thought was great. I like the original with Jack Nicholson. I thought he was great as
Yeah,
the Joker.
yeah. I mean that's always kind of been my favorite, the Michael Keaton Batman. And part of it is, look, that was the first one that I was exposed to as a kid, so of course there's
Right.
part of that to it. But and the Dark Knight trilogy was really good. I mean, that was kind of the first two of those movies came out when I was high school and college and stuff like that. I saw like the Dark Knight, I think, like 4 times in the theater, which,
Yeah.
I mean, part of that was too, I was skipping skipping out of work to go see it. But yeah, I'm eager to see, because Ben Affleck, for a time had played the Batman for some of the DC, the Batman for Superman movie, and of course Justice League. But this is Robert Pattinson, and obviously he's from Harry Potter and the shit with the or shoot. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay.
Twilight, right? I think that's
Right.
I whatever it was.
He's a good actor.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's like, this is a guy who's been around now for, I mean, I think whatever that Harry Potter movie had to have come out, what, 05, 06 or whatever. So we're talking like 15 years now. So I think Batman should be dark. I think it should, and that's why I kind of am a little optimistic about the time, the runtime, because I do feel like there is a lot to unpack in this, and especially if they're planning on making this more than just this movie. You know what I mean? Because, like, obviously
Yep.
they're, the DC EU is greatly trailing the Marvel version of itself, in terms of movie production and the overall growth of that industry. So they're really going to have to hit it out of the park here. And I think I like I said, I personally have always been a fan of the darker side of Batman. Um, so I am eager to see that. So that's something, hopefully maybe not this weekend, but at least within the next week, I'm definitely going to go see it.
Yeah, everything I've heard about it is really good. Yes, exactly. Now, will you be in costume when you go see this, or will you just show up as yourself?
Well, let's put it this way: I don't consider my uniform costume. If that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay, I got you.
I am the Batman.
Yes. Well, actually, Robert Pattinson looks so much like Brock Osweiler. That's what I always thought.
Oh God, no!
He does.
Like, if Brock Osweiler was Batman, okay, yeah. Like his imagine him trying to use this like belt hook. It would just overshoot the building by like 20 feet, and just
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
it would just be a disaster. It'd be like,
Yeah.
oh God, no, please no.
Maybe Tom Brady will play Batman at some point. I mean, he's getting into the movies, right? 80 for Brady with those 4 great actresses, which seems pretty fascinating.
Yeah, you know what? Based on what he said yesterday or the other day when he was talking about, oh, it's been 5 weeks since I retired. Like, that guy's gonna get so damn bored. He's like, 5 weeks, Tom. It's March. If you're already counting down the days, like, look,
I know.
like, I don't like. Look, I think if he comes back, it's still a very slim chance. I'm not completely closing the door on it. I'm not, again.
Well, doesn't he have to really draw like an inside straight flush to come back? First of all, Tampa is going to have to cooperate, which right now they don't look like they're going to. Also, Tampa's going to have to go out and get an expensive quarterback. Maybe they trade for Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson or Aaron Rodgers or whatever, and then they pay that quarterback, so they have to get rid of Brady. And I'm sure they could get value back for him, even if he plays 1 or 2 years. A team would be foolish not to give up something of consequence to get Tom Brady in the building. But then they're going to probably look to trade him to the AFC. So a lot of things have to happen, and then he maybe has to have a sit down with Giselle and the family and say, "I need to play." And maybe he's getting driven crazy, but maybe he's driving them crazy.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for. That's really that's what I'm holding out hope for. I'm hoping that he's just like one of those guys that it's just like all these years she was thinking, oh, you know what, I want you home more, and it's like literally it's March. It's like the first week of March, and it's like I can't deal with this. I can't deal with this. Get out of here.
Oh,
Do something.
My dad had the winter off one year. I was the youngest. I was in high school. Everybody else was out of the house. So, he took the winter off. They were financially pretty good. And he drove me, my mother, and whoever came by crazy. Because all of a sudden he was getting involved in things he never got involved in before.
Exactly.
All of a sudden he's worrying about the grocery list. I'm like, he hadn't been to a supermarket ever. So like that's what happens. I mean, I remember the story about Bill Parcells when he retired. I think he was divorced, so the wife just said, I can't take this anymore. And they were divorced like 6 months later. Because, again, those guys, they don't turn it off. Like Brady, I'm sure, at the house is Tom Brady. He's not, I don't picture him like eating potato chips and laying on the couch all day. He probably, just going crazy because he's type A plus. Well, so I think he's coming back. And I hope he comes back. It'd be a great story.
Look, I would love for him to come back. I don't know how much weight Bruce Arians' comments. Like, look, I think, if you need a trade for the guy, you're going to have to offer up a pretty penny. I don't know how much say Bruce Arians ultimately would have to make the decision that no, we're not going to accommodate him. We talk about Arians a lot. I think a lot of what he says is a lot of showmanship, if you want to put it nicely. I think he just says things sometimes. I don't like sometimes I think he says too much and not like reveals too much. I just think, sometimes you just got to quit while you're ahead. And like some of the things he says is like, look, him and Tom could be talking about this behind the scenes and kind of laughing, but it's like, look, when you get up there, and I understand you're trying to show confidence in your team, but like his comments about like, oh, it wasn't just Tom, it was that like, look, there's 53 guys on that roster, but no, Tom was the reason why you won a Super Bowl. Like I'm not sitting here trying to diminish the efforts of anyone on that team. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not saying that none of them were involved, but and this goes to Bucks fans too. It's like, to be honest, if you're trying to think that your the life of as a Bucks team is going to be the same without Tom, it's just not a reality. Like, I mean,
no.
the thing was, it's like it's very obvious to me. First of all, they hadn't won a playoff game since 2002, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I was in high school. John, you had.
I was old.
Well, I was gonna say maybe you did have pony like hair back then, 20 years ago. That's how long it was. Certainly, maybe not now, but hey, it is what it is.
I can think back to that. Yeah,
exactly,
I remember that.
Exactly. So, I mean, we're talking 20 years ago, and it's no coincidence that in the 2 seasons that Tom Brady was the starter, they had 5 postseason victories, which was one shy of their franchise record to that point. So, like, I'm not sitting here saying that Mike Evans isn't a great receiver and Vita Vea isn't a great defender and Antoine Winfield Jr. isn't going to be a great player in this league. No, we've seen plenty of teams. Every team in the NFL has great talent. Like, there's not one single team in this league. I know we joke about the Jaguars, we joke about the Jets. They have a lot of talented players, John. Talent doesn't equal success, and it certainly doesn't equal success when that talent isn't really heavily focused on the quarterback position. So, I think it's a little foolish, maybe a little bit more of a pipe dream to think that things are just going to be the same, without Tom, and that he wasn't the primary reason why they won a Super Bowl. I mean, it's just a fact. It's not an insult. It's a fact.
They won 29 games in 2 years. They were tied for the best record in football last year. There were only 2 teams that won 13 regular season games, the Buccaneers and the Packers.
Yeah.
They were this close to beating the Rams in the divisional round, and then they would have hosted San Francisco in the conference championship game, win, and then they would go on to the Super Bowl, play the Bengals, win. I mean, they were very close to repeating the Super Bowl champs, while they had all sorts of injuries and internal problems with the coaches of buffoon and all of that, because you know what? The number 12, dragged them there as much as you could possibly drag a football team. No, I mean, I hope he comes back. I mean, he's still got so much left in the tank. I remember when Favre went through this where he was in, out, but he wasn't playing at the same level Brady's playing at. And, if Brady's committed, he's committed. And the Jets, I think, sent a second round pick to Green Bay for Favre. He spent 1 year with the Jets, and then they traded him to Minnesota. So, yeah, I mean, Brady could play 2 more years. I mean, who's saying he's not? But I hope he comes back. I think it'd be a fascinating story. The NFL's better with him and Rodgers and all those guys playing and playing well.
Oh yeah, and look, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, obviously, I would get 1 more year just because again, there's so much left out on the table for him. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah,
so much that he can still do. This isn't just like trying to hang on. Again, do I think he's worth 4 first round picks? Oh, absolutely. I like that. That's the thing. Like people, I do believe overvalue draft picks. There is like, but I also think they also undervalue them as well. Like just throwing away draft picks can be
right.
disastrous. But even if it were for 1 or 2 seasons, if you're telling me you could give up 4 first round draft picks, don't you think the Jets? Well, maybe not the Jets, but you know what I mean. Like one of these teams that are
The
perennial.
Dolphins,
Yeah,
right? The
well,
Dolphins.
think about it. Like
Yeah,
teams that are consistently every single year picking in the top 10, and they go absolutely nowhere. How valuable are those
right.
picks? Like you're telling
Yep.
me that Tampa wouldn't trade years of picking in the top 10. Essentially, they did, but they didn't have to get. Unfortunately for them, they didn't have to give up 4 first round draft picks to do so. They just had
Hmm.
to convince Tom in free agency to come to Tampa. So, yeah, it was. I do hope this isn't. I mean, again, I'm not. My expectations are low for him to come back. Although I am not closing out the door. I hope we get to see at least 1 more season. And if it's not in Tampa, that's fine. I'd love to see it in San Francisco because I think they win a Super Bowl. And then he can say, "All right,
Yeah. Oh
see
yeah.
ya. I'm going home, right down the
Yep.
street." You know?
Yep. No, I think that look, any team he goes on becomes a Super Bowl contender, and I pretty much feel the same way about Rodgers too. As much as I make fun of my favorite player, if he goes to Denver, they're certainly a playoff team, and who knows what happens when he gets to the playoffs. It's not normally good when he's your quarterback, but he's still talented enough to pull off some games. But yeah, I mean, look, he's I'm sure staying in shape. I don't think, like I said, I don't think he's eating potato chips and sitting on the couch. I'm sure he's staying in shape. I've heard some reports he's still throwing. I don't know who he's throwing to, but he's still throwing to. He may have 500 footballs that he throws at a target for all we know with his helmet and shoulder pads on. We know how maniacal he is. And again, maybe a month or two from now, Giselle goes, "Go play football. You're driving me nuts."
It's like texting Gronkowski over and over again. Hey, what are you
Right,
doing? You
right.
want to come over? You
Yeah, yeah.
want to come over?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
Jim
like,
Gray's probably you could have Jim Gray out there running patterns for him, right? Or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Or he's just out there throwing the ball to like just to nothing.
The
And just
dummy.
go,
No, I mean the guy's got plenty of money. He could
yeah,
build his own football field and put, maybe throwing a Derek Jeter because he's got nothing to do now and maybe they're going to hook up and buy a team together, even though they don't have enough money to buy an NFL team. They could, be the frontman for that. But yeah, I mean, he could do whatever he wants. I'll support him. He just has been incredible for 22 years. And like I said, he's still right there. I mean, he and Aaron Rodgers were still the two best quarterbacks in football last year. And you know what? If he plays this year, those will be the two best quarterbacks in football.
oh yeah,
Because they just are. I mean, it's just that. I mean, because they're physically still good, and yet the mental part of it, they kind of like trump all those young guys who are all excellent, but they're not at the same level as these masters.
yeah. And look, I mean, part of that is also you attain that over time, but
Hmm.
it just doesn't come with time. Like to reach
Right.
that level, you also have to be beyond excellent, and that's what those guys have been. So, and look, I mean, it was like that last year, and I like I told you before, I will go to my grave. Uh, uh, not my MVP. Hashtag not my MVP this year. I will never. I'll tell you this, John, and it's not bitter. It's not because I feel like I just I'm a bitter sore. No, I just cannot recognize that MVP this year. I just can't do it because like as I told people like the fact that what was it 39 people voted that he was the MVP doesn't change my mind about how I felt over the last several
So,
weeks of the season.
so the next time I read an Aaron Rodgers column and I say 4-time MVP, you're gonna put an asterisk next to it.
Maybe I am the editor, so I could do that.
That's
if
true.
I wanted.
That's true.
I could do
boy,
that.
I'm not
going to
write a column. No more columns about Aaron Rodgers. I'm sticking strictly to basketball.
Okay, all right. Well,
and LeBron is a 4-time MVP. I hope you go along with that.
No. Look, I'm fine with that. Look, I know my place. I know my place. I don't know basketball as well as I know football, so I can sit here and tell you that I wouldn't be able to confidently argue against any of LeBron's, MVPs, and I'm not looking to. I'm not. That's not what I'm out to do. Like that's not my motivation. I'm not going through and saying like, oh well, Aaron Rodgers doesn't. I just think in this specific race, this particular one, 2022, I feel so strongly that the voters got it wrong. And all kidding aside, that's just how I feel. I'm not going to sit there and put an asterisk. I mean, in the record books, yeah, he is a four-time MVP, and that I cannot change. However, if people are going to use this, I've seen people say, well, Aaron Rodgers was obviously better because he was the MVP. I'm like, well no, that's not.
No.
That's where I draw the line. That's where I cannot say something.
Peyton Manning has 5.
Yeah,
and I would put Manning ahead of Rodgers as of right now. But I mean, look, if Rodgers plays 3 more years, I mean, I've done this for the last 10 years. It's become, sickening to me. I mean, 3 months ago, I'm like, if he can win the Super Bowl this year, he can vault up to number 3.
Well, I mean, it was true,
and then he didn't. But he didn't do it.
And something that happened that we kind of maybe didn't expect was that he took a step back. I didn't think.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was like I thought the worst case scenario was it could stay the exact same for him. You know what I mean?
Right.
I thought it's not the end of the world. I mean, again, you can go out and win a Super Bowl this year, and we'll all sit back and kind of chuckle at this and think of it. Oh, it's like Super Bowl 46 for Brady. It wasn't their finest moment. They kind of whatever. But yeah, I mean, I look at his performance took him back a little bit, maybe a nudge, and that's all it takes to really ramp up the conversation.
These playoff losses too. I mean, he's 11-10 in the playoffs. Manning was 14-13. So, if he can get to that, and that includes winning a Super Bowl, then he basically has the same postseason record as Manning, same number of Super Bowls. Now, Manning did go to 2 more. Rodgers tends to be a guy who wins in the first round and then loses in the conference championship game. He didn't do that this year. He lost in the divisional round. And his games aren't like horrible. Like Manning had some really bad playoff performance. 3 interceptions against the Patriots, and overtime interception against Baltimore, all of that stuff, right? Rodgers, he never does that, but it's always like there's something missing.
Well,
like that game against San Francisco, it's like, what are you doing? Like it seemed like you checked out after Mercedes Lewis fumbled in the first quarter, and you kind of just threw your hands up and said, "Well, we're not going to win." And then
what's worrisome is the look, they scored on the first drive, which is great, but in hindsight, you look back and you're like, well, most teams script very specifically first 15 plays or so, 10 to 15 plays, and sometimes that's an advantage for some teams. But once you get past that scriptedness, all of a sudden they look lost. And it's Rodgers has a tendency to, and this is what's really fueled his pro Rodgers argument, is that they'll he'll play poorly, and the team will also, it's not just him, but the team around him plays poorly, but he contributes greatly to getting in that hole. Well, then you add a couple nice drives when you're kind of down big. I'm not going to call it garbage time because I think
I know what you mean. Yep.
Yeah, it's just so it makes his numbers look a little bit better, which makes us sit here and say, well, he has good. It doesn't make sense how he could have a higher playoff passer rating and still, but that's to your point, John. That's why something's missing.
There's something missing there. Yeah,
timing,
there's
timing of what you accomplish matters. That's why football is so great, because all touchdowns are technically created equal, but the reality of it is they aren't. They just aren't. I mean, the timing of it, the momentum in the game, the situation, all
Mhm.
that stuff matters. That adds more to touchdowns, and I think for the most part, Rodgers he gets the ones he's supposed to. Let's put it that way. And he
Right.
doesn't create as many situations to get out of holes. And I know that sounds confusing. And people can be like, "What the hell
No,
are
no,
you
I
talking
get you.
about?"
Well,
I'm just
well, the two back he lost in 2016 to Atlanta, 44-21, and then he lost to San Francisco in 2019 in the conference championship, 37-20. So he put up 21 and 20 points. I think he threw 3 touchdowns in each game. So you look at that and go, well, he was okay. No, he wasn't. They didn't put a point on the board in either first half.
and that
Like, so
thank you.
that
Yeah, that's kind of what
yeah,
I'm
so,
that's kind of what I'm getting at.
so
Yeah,
and look, this is my favorite player. I love him. I think he
yeah.
gives us great content. I think he's the most interesting guy. I mean, he can be a bore at some point and aloof and arrogant, all that stuff. But that's what kind of makes him fascinating. I especially in football where most of the characters, are dull. Especially the quarterbacks, they tend to be very, very, measured, et cetera. And this guy's not. So that's what I like about him too. But yeah, I mean, you're held to 0 points in both first halves in back-to-back appearances in the conference championship game, and then go back to Seattle where they had all sorts of chances to just
Mhm.
blow that game wide open, and they kept kicking field goals because he wasn't up to par. And then the Tampa game, there were chances there too, right? So, and then this game against San Francisco, it's like the last 3 quarters, I'm looking at him going, "Who is this guy? Is
Yeah.
this really?"
Well,
Because I'll generally watch a game and go, "How the hell has this guy only appeared in one Super Bowl? Like he's too good to not have appeared in more and one more." And then in the final 3 quarters against San Francisco, I'm like, this doesn't even look like him.
yeah.
Who is this? His brother, whatever the hell his brother's name, who was the
Jordan
bachelor.
Rodgers.
Jordan, yeah, he's the younger brother who played at Vanderbilt, right? And had like
Yeah.
a cup of coffee. I mean, this is Jordan Rodgers, not Aaron. Like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, actually, now that I think about it, maybe that's why Aaron Rodgers was so cold to Jordan Love. Maybe because they shared the same name as his brother. Which, think about that. No, I mean, no,
Oh.
I'm just adding fuel to
No, I don't think
the
you
fire.
are. I think you may be onto something here. Look, anything's possible. As
That's
Kevin
true.
Garnett said, anything's possible with Aaron Rodgers. Lord knows where he finds the energy to, hate things.
Well, and kind of go. We'll go to obviously the Tampa game because that's a great example of like, okay, obviously, you know, when we say that, like, people will always point to, stretches where Brady wasn't his best in the playoffs. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, no quarterback is perfect. Like the idea
Right.
that these guys are all perfect, there are, the only we know the only perfect quarterback. His name is Mr. Perfect. We've seen him throw a football undoctored to himself about like 60 yards down the field. The most impressive feat I've ever seen on a football field. Um, but the reality of it is, it's like, okay, so that game against Tampa, the NFC Championship game was perfect. They fall behind, largely,
Mhm.
due to, Tom Brady was excellent. And the very end,
Oh,
last play of the first half was the absolute killer instinct dagger. People would
mhm.
say, oh, well, Kevin King got burned. I don't care if Kevin King got burned or he was right on Scotty Miller's hip. That ball was going to be caught because it was perfectly thrown, exactly where
Perfect throw.
Scotty Miller would have had it. So, you know, he was great. He had a rough stretch in the third quarter, but the difference is, like at that point, it's a lot different situation than if he were to start like that. If he would have started that game
Mhm.
like that, they lose that game. Green Bay goes on to go, win the go to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Um, Aaron Rodgers obviously had a stronger second half, but look, when there's a little bit less pressure, and I know when you're down, there's usually more pressure, but in this case, they were down what was it, 20
28-10.
28 to
28 to
10.
10.
You
Yep.
you can
He
play
got
a
him
little
back.
bit
Yep.
looser, yeah, because well, guess what? The other team's like, well, hey, we're up 18, we're doing pretty good right now. So yeah, I Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback. The problem, and we've talked about this so much, is that he's compared to Tom Brady, and it's just not an appropriate conversation. It's not
Mhm.
an appropriate comparison because he's always going to come out looking a lot worse than what it is. Because the reality of it is, he's had a great career. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and rightfully so. But we talk about his career as if it's a massive failure because we compare it to Tom Brady's. Well, guess what? Surprise, surprise. You compare any quarterback's career to Tom Brady, it's going to look like a massive failure.
Yeah, it's like a lot of the great players in the well, in the '90s more than the '80s, but in the '90s who just were compared to Michael Jordan. No one measured up because the guy won the championship 6 out of 8 years. In the 2 years he didn't win it, he was retired for one of them and came back, 2/3 of the way through the season. So yeah, if you're Karl Malone or Charles Barkley or John Stockton or Reggie Miller or whoever, Patrick Ewing, it's like you never won any championships because one guy dominated. So yeah, you come up short. So it's just something missing, and it's not physical, and I don't even think it's mental in a sense of like the guy is a smart football player. It's not like he's a guy who is does stupid things, but it may be a little bit like Peyton Manning, and I think with Peyton Manning also did this, where I think they overanalyze things. It's almost like paralysis through analysis. Like if they, and I've said this about Rodgers, if he has even a bad pass in the second quarter, it seems to linger on forever. Whereas Brady's got a short memory. He'll throw a pick and then, heck, the guy won a Super Bowl throwing a pick six.
Yeah.
Who does that?
Down,
right?
Already down 21-3.
Yeah, I'm like, I threw a pick six. Like most every other quarterback would have been, well, not my day. He'd be stewing on the sideline, and like we saw what happened. He threw 2 picks against Seattle in the Super Bowl, and then how was he after that? He was perfect. So
Yeah.
Whereas Rodgers, if he does that, it's almost like whether he gives up. I think he's a competitive guy. I don't think he's non-competitive, but he's very competitive.
I
But it's almost like he just lets that, like, he's got to learn. Well, he's 38 now. I don't think he's going to learn this, but just like, okay, that happened. Let me move on. Almost like a kicker or a goal. You're a goalie, right? You give up a bad goal, you got to say, okay, the next 55 minutes, nothing's getting by me.
I've done that plenty of times. I've done that plenty of times.
But that has to be a mentality, right? Like, okay, all right, bad goal. Like, okay, let's move on. Nothing's getting by me now. He doesn't seem to have that, but I think he overanalyzes and does too much of that, kind of like Peyton Manning would do that. The bad stuff would continue.
That's and that is it seems like a little thing, but that's a huge trait in a quarterback because of the nature of the position. You have to be able to do that. And look, it lends some validity. Like there's this obviously very. I mean, these arguments are never going to find common ground because there's no gray area for anyone. It's either this or that. But like the idea that Rodgers plays it safe, there's some legitimacy to that. In that, it doesn't mean he doesn't make tight window throws, which that's kind of the go-to. What Packers fans will try to defend, like, "Oh, you telling me this was a safe throw?" No, but to your point, like his way of not dealing with having to come back from interceptions is not throwing it. And sometimes that is more of or it seems like, that's more of a motivating factor for him. And sometimes it's a detriment because again, sometimes you need to take those risks. Now, again, it's not no risk it, no biscuit, not like just throw it up there blindly. We're talking about very calculated risks, very calculated, attempts like, hey, if this works, it doesn't. If it's third and long. If we get picked off 40 yards down the field, it's not that big of a deal. Because exactly. We know that one, it's not going to bother Tom Brady, and two, when it comes to the game, it's not really that impactful on the football field, and we saw that play out in the Packers Buccaneers game because essentially two of those interceptions added better yardage and field position for the Buccaneers than the 2 punts that followed them. So,
right.
But if you can't compartmentalize as a quarterback, that's still going to linger. So I think part of the way Rodgers tries to avoid that is, well, I can avoid that by not throwing interceptions. Sometimes that means, well, I'm going to hone in on what I know. And we saw that where he honed in on Devontae Adams as opposed to maybe getting out of your comfort zone a little bit to try to.
Alan Lazard was wide open in midfield. He may have gone all the way for a touchdown, or at least got them in field goal range. Didn't throw to him.
If he thinks in his head, even for a split second, like, oh man, I could this could end up being an interception. It's over. It's over because that right there is enough to derail whatever you're trying to do, especially at the quarterback position, especially in those moments. And that's why it's such a fine line between being just a great talent and being just a great quarterback, and then also being the greatest of all time. So,
well, look at Joe Montana. I'll bring this up because I put Montana second behind Brady. And when they beat the Bengals for the second time in the Super Bowl, they're down 3. They're at their own 8. He leads them on a 92-yard scoring drive. Jerry Rice was the MVP of the game. I think he had over 200 yards receiving. Who caught the game-winning touchdown? It wasn't Jerry Rice. It was John Taylor, right? Because Montana, most quarterbacks would say, I've got the best receiver in football. He's having a huge day. I got to get him the ball. We didn't force feed him in that situation. He went to another damn good receiver in John Taylor, but that was the right play. And he trusted him, and it was, I mean, you've seen the throw a million times. You can't throw football any better than Montana did on that touchdown, or really in that entire drive. And that's what he did. Whereas, Rodgers would be honed in on Devontae Adams, which he was the entire playoff loss to San Francisco, which, makes some sense. The guy's great, but you've got other players out there. You've got to trust those guys. And you can't just give up on everybody because Mercedes Lewis fumbles the ball back in the first quarter. You got to let that go and move on from there. But Brady's had that ability, always had that ability to just forget what happened and, just move on. And he's a killer. I mean, he is a killer. Tom Brady, I've told you before, to me, it's Jordan and Kobe and Barry Bonds and Tiger Woods and Brady are the five guys I've seen that are absolute killers. As great as LeBron is, and I think he's the greatest player ever, he doesn't have that mindset. He's a little bit different. It's still effective.
I would say, and I'm actually, I'll defend LeBron a little bit here in a way, not to that level. And because, obviously to be as successful as he has been, he has to have some sort of killer, like you can't be that successful and not have that. Yeah. But we're talking about the absolute highest peak level that we've ever seen in sports.
And those guys are nuts.
Yeah. Again, and some people just got to understand that that's not necessarily an insult towards guys like LeBron or Aaron Rodgers. It's just kind of putting in perspective how great those players are. So real quick, John, no Major League Baseball, first two series canceled. I said I put it in the title that we're going to talk about the Major League Baseball lockout, so I was contractually obligated to at least say that. Hopefully, by Monday, we will have maybe a little bit more insight as to what's going to happen with this moving forward. But I know you and I can speak more to that then. So we'll save that conversation for Monday. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Stay tuned to NFL Network and whatnot for combine coverage, of course, because they're going to have videos and all the 40-yard dashes and all that stuff. And of course, check out fullpresscoverage.com because we got a bunch of combine notes, and of course, all of our draft profiles are being put up as we speak. So enjoy your weekend. Have a great Friday. Have a great Saturday. If you're happen to be living down where I am, enjoy the beautiful weather. If you're up there in the Northeast, get your get your Gore-Tex ready and enjoy the nice cold weather. So have a great Friday, everyone. Have a